go first?
No, I didn't bring that stuff down yet, so.
Okay, so then it definitely is me.
Yay, errands.
So, thank you for the opportunity of being able to present the manager's budget, but also for my first go around with the budget was great way to further understand what's going on and really appreciate the hard work that our department heads do and all our staff. And of course the work of Dale and Tom. I don't think that for the manager's budget, you will see increases, but there are things that we've already talked about. So you might want to help me in terms of, you know, a lot of this is stuff you know, how much detail you want. We certainly seem to be on track with revenues, so there's no issue there. And then most of the changes that you'll see in the salary lines are the reallocation of funding salaries from the general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. So that we have recognized throughout the entire budget.
So let's just go, like, sort of page one, we can skip, we won't have to stop unless we have a reason to, right?
Right.
I'm just trying to understand it. I mean, none of these are really big numbers, but like the health stipend, who's that referencing?
That's the health stipend,
There's nobody who
There's
takes it
nobody on
anymore?
board right now.
right, what,
I think Karen.
oh,
For the
just
health stipend.
right now, but
Yeah.
that will probably change, so.
Because recommended budget is that we don't put any money in there, so you're assuming that nobody on that everybody on the board is gonna take the.
Well,
Oh, I love
a
the board.
former trustee was $1,000.
Right.
Say that again?
You had $1,000 in the budget for 2019.
If you
Yeah.
don't take advantage of the village's health insurance,
Yeah.
Oh,
you opt out because
I
there's some
see.
alternative.
So just because of when I started, it's not, for me, it's not there yet, but it will be.
No, okay, because right now, I mean, but the thing is, sometimes I'm not clear on who I'm looking at. We're just looking at the board of trustees here on page.
Page one is trustees.
Yeah,
Page
just
one
the
of 16.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 of 16.
Got it.
And we haven't actually onboarded the two new.
No, so that may be,
Yeah. The 8,000 for the NICOM training, is that, we don't have any past years on this? It's ironically called a year-end budget comparison.
Actually,
Zero, bunch of
it's
zeros
at the
and
bottom of
comparison.
page 2.
at the bottom of page 2, so we do have years, so it looks like in 2018, there was 7,200 spent on professional dues and meetings, which would include NICOM. So I think that continues to be sort of a realistic allocation.
Okay, I
But
understand now, but there's,
just for trustees. Actually, I think that also included the WMOA dinner in 2018.
the dinner was 2018?
Yes.
The WMA dinner itself was like $9,000, wasn't it?
No, it was about
I think it was in 7.
less than 7. But I don't think that we're the host next year, it's like
No, we
3 or
have-
4 years,
yeah,
so.
it's
The town has to do it and then we do it.
So this would be really training for the trustees.
How come there are no past year? I just don't know how to read this.
I think because in the past,
They
we only had
they don't,
1,000
there's no
per
headers
person.
on the top of the page, so that's making
No,
it
there-
extra
that
confusing,
was
but there's also
the
no
added-
numbers associated with most of it, which is
And
like.
added last year.
This is
The training.
we're looking at.
The
Well,
So,
That's the first
so
one.
when,
Trustee was
when, if
added
you're
last
looking
year.
at,
It was only
page 3, this is the,
it was
really specific to, board activity. So up until 3, we're still talking about board activity, so, when you're looking at,
Yeah, but it doesn't do a comparison to everything, it just does a number.
Actually, the bottom of page 2 is
Right.
the header line for the 409 dues and
so if you,
account.
yeah, if you just look at page
So it
2,
doesn't tell the previous year, does it?
yes, so that, it does, if you, I don't know why the headers didn't carry over, because I think they did on most of the other, maybe we're just looking at this format differently, but it's, 2017 actual, 2018 actual, 2019 original budget, 2019
Oh,
revised budget,
right here.
2019 actuals, and then 2020.
Okay, so this is just trustees, by the way, because the
Right,
mayor's
it's
as
just
their own, so
trustees.
this is just for the four trustees.
Yes, just for the trustees.
So are there any changes in any of these line items, because I'm having a hard time, looking at this.
No, the only
From year to
changes
year.
is just allocation based on, the funds, but, there's, there really is no,
So,
no difference. And then, you know, unless you're talking about the board initiatives, which have all been reallocated to their proper places in the budget.
so the actual for 2019, which is
Oh.
$27,000, Tom?
That's the total village board budget, all accounts from salaries, right down through all the contractual.
And just, I just wanna clarify, I'm part of the village board, but I'm not part of this, because I'm sad.
No, I just, yeah, no, because you're on
Right.
the page. But so what is, so why are we, so going back into here, you know, from 2017, we have $27,000, then 2018 is 34, 2019 is 65, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the biggest difference, I guess, from, that we are recommending $43,000 for 2020?
So I guess if you're, I guess the bump here would be the Wamoa dinner?
That was paid for in 2018. In 2019's budget, in the 1010400 contractual line, we had a couple initiatives that we have not expended and aren't budgeted there for 2020.
Oh, that was, I'm sorry, that was,
Which are covering your.
so there was that was the code enforcement study, there were some interns, and there was also additional $7,000 in art, so it was a total of $30,000 that wasn't fully expended. Was a building department, I think code enforcement efficiency study.
Functionality study.
There was money put in for interns that was not expended, and, then there was the money for, the arts that was within that $30,000. So that's what shows that blip, so some of those, we're not going to put in again because they were sort of one-time allocations.
Doesn't sound like it should really have been in the trustees'
Budget.
budget anyway. They were their requests from the trustees, but they
So-
weren't,
So is it that, Dale, like, was that they were in as, trustee requests, but then because they didn't get expended, they didn't get reallocated?
No, because
Okay.
I had actually reallocated during the adopted budget last year.
Oh.
So for whatever reason, these requests were left. I think, I mean, other than building code enforcement, the 3 interns were for board-related activities.
That those were, yes.
Internship initiatives, there was 2 for building and code enforcement.
So we
One
had
for
3
the-
interns allocated, but none happened.
Right.
So
Plus,
we're not doing that again.
plus other ones.
Correct.
Right, and none of them happened, so that's why at this point, we
Yeah, but
didn't
just remove them
reintroduce
for now.
them
Right,
this year.
right.
okay. The NICOM training for the $8,000, how many of us went to NICOM this year?
I did, Fontel.
Oh,
You?
Stewart,
I went to this,
yes, you did.
I went
did.
twice to NICOM this year.
No, you did. This was because the year
I
before,
went
none
in
of us
February
went,
with
I
just
don't
the
think.
manager, and then.
You did, and,
And then I went in
Yeah.
May, we went again?
1, 2, 3,
Yeah, yeah.
Randy also?
Oh,
you know, if
Years
you
of
look at that, we have, you know, we anticipate trying to keep that consistent, so that we make sure. it's-
Well,
Yeah,
we'll have
absolutely, I was
to
just
do
wondering how much we spent, but
Yeah.
that's fine, yeah, I
And we
don't
have,
wanna
when
miss
you
out
have
on
two
it.
new trustees, the first year.
Exactly.
I would hope that they would go, yes.
They,
Yeah,
they,
really should.
I think it's really important, it was a great experience for me, so I would highly encourage it.
So you're keeping that line the same?
That's fine,
Yes.
that's fine. So we didn't
So the-
spend 8,000 on that, that's okay.
So the after school is moved to 001, then I'm still on first.
That was, moved to the rec department,
Okay, so it's under,
yes.
okay.
Now I know how to read this, all right, thank you.
Really?
I'm a
Because I
little slow on
can't.
the uptake.
Well, I'm still behind you here. I'm really
Well,
having a
on
hard time
page one, I
understanding what I'm
understand,
looking
because
at.
it specifically says, the 2019 board request after school moved to,
Gotcha, okay, cool.
So it's all the
so
board
that's why it's
initiatives, and then
$0
it's zeroed
here,
out,
so it
because
doesn't,
they
we
all,
don't add it in
they
twice.
all moved, yes, it is a
So
little confusing,
There's
but
10
it does,
grand
it does
reflected
capture-
in the after-school program reflected on this budget line, which is part of the rec.
right.
That's the example. The next page. Okay,
What page are you on?
Now you're on 4?
Okay.
I'm done with the trustees.
Okay, so, so for some administrative expenses and also the intermunicipal agreement, which is the port, IMA for parking violations and, so, there we're not really seeing any substantive changes.
So the-
2020 recommended budget.
Intermunicipal contractual for traffic violations bureau? What does that refer to?
That's paying for the Compass software in the court as well as some of the positions that process the parking tickets.
What's the percentage?
We still pay for town court staff?
Just for, I think, a position, or maybe a position and a
Position
half
and a half, I think.
for processing the parking tickets.
Oh, here it is.
Periodically talk about starting our own traffic bureau. Do we decide, do I keep getting told that that's not possible, or it's not feasible, it's too expensive,
I
or
don't
it's
even
not legal?
remember discussing that.
I think that there are some issues regarding that, that may make it, not as simple as one might think, so, we have, yes, and I'm not sure that it would be, wholly cost effective, so this might be the more efficient way to do it. The majority of traffic violations in the town do happen in the village,
Oh, I know.
yeah, so,
What's the revenue that we get from?
480 for the parking violations.
480,000.
400, did you say 400?
480.
Okay, as long as you didn't say 180.
No, no, 480.
Basically
And then,
50,000.
and then the building department has their own little revenue piece too, but just for the parking. Yes.
So everything is basically flat line here from what I'm looking at.
pretty much.
Not that I'm having an easy time reading it, but it seems like it's basically
It's a lot of,
not a lot of
no,
variations.
not a lot of variations on this. And then similarly, in the mayor's budget, the real change that you're seeing is the change in allocation to shifting from water fund and sewer fund to general fund.
So while we're talking about the mayor and trustees, before we move on, let's talk about our salaries. And help me understand where we are with having an incremental increase every year, because we were
It's in the
given,
village code that, or the charter, that whatever the CSEA increase is gonna be applied to the trustees
and the mayor.
and mayor.
Okay, so we're getting it.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we didn't put it in the budget yet because, the contract wasn't settled.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanna make sure that it's been there because we keep having
It's
miscommunications.
really-
It's unclear.
It's really pennies, but to be consistent with all the other conversations, you should have put it in a consistent of whatever it is, not what it may end up being. Because when we talked about budgets for other things, we said we don't know how it'll fall out, so we took last year and just carried it through.
Yeah, that's,
So
yeah.
really, that's what should have been done here too, just for, literally it's pennies, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, but, it should just be consistent in the way it's done, that's what I would do with all, because we don't know
Yeah,
what
and
the
that's what we
contract
did.
is.
That's what we did, so.
I didn't hear Tom say
Yeah,
that.
no, there was, the, CSEK contract, is being finalized as we speak. We were waiting for our union rep, he was out of the country, so,
Okay.
that's in the process of being finalized. But those increases are not incorporated in this budget because they are not final yet.
So the salaries that are listed here are,
2019.
right, but it's,
Except for the fact that we,
oh, I'm just looking at the
Change the
general fund portion of it
percentage.
though.
from 60/30/10 to,
So your general fund would have went up because you have a higher percentage going from the general fund now than you did last year. The total amount is the same though.
Right, but it's not this number here.
It would be 2.5 or
Well,
whatever
it'll do
percentage.
whatever it is.
This is just the general fund portion of it, and I'm seeing this $11,705.
That's the general fund portion of,
That represents
2019.
75% of my,
No, the salaries are.
Right. That's the general fund proportion.
right, and you're gonna see further on that this contingency is part of this budget meeting as well. So there's an amount in there, so.
A big amount. Huge amount.
In the contingency,
Yeah.
to
Right.
account for the shift.
Yes.
And I'm sorry,
all right.
not the shift, the
Contract.
Contracts and salaries and.
the contract, yes.
Mhm.
great. So that, when did we reset when did we establish this? Lori was here, so 3 years ago.
Yes.
4 years.
Did you still not take the increase?
This
Doesn't
part.
matter, he
Oh.
doesn't, he
Because
can
it
do
was
whatever
after
he wants
that,
with
so
it.
it was.
He can't help it, it's in his
He
job.
does whatever
could
he wants
donate
with
it.
it.
I could,
That's right.
I
Donate
still
to
don't have a
all
cell phone though.
Yep.
It's my personal phone.
But the point was, I'm glad to know that that's in there, and just for anybody, if there, anybody happens to watch this, the reason why we care about that is because it's very politically difficult for a board of trustees to increase their own salary, and no board did it for a decade and a half, and in that time, the microscopic little stipend that people get for the work that they do as elected officials hadn't increased, and even when we increased it by 25%, we still didn't meet where we would have been if the Board of Trustees at the time had gotten the incremental increases consistent with the rest of the staff. So it's important that it's indexed going forward, so that it doesn't have to be another
Future
15
boards,
years for
yeah.
another board to try and catch up, do some, big chunk of money increase, and it's just, it's very difficult to increase your own salary by 25%, and it's just not much.
And it's important to understand that the reason for that is that it makes it a more inclusive playing field, because the time commitments to doing these jobs can be onerous, and this, a lack of a stipend that, accounts for that can make it difficult, and it limits the number of people who may be able to participate. So I think
Yes.
it's an important point
Thank
for
you.
people to understand.
It allows
Why
for.
it allows for greater participation.
Exactly, and that is different in Ossining than it is in Briarcliff or some other communities where a larger portion of their community members may be able to afford childcare for all of their evening meetings without
Exactly.
having.
So it's all the costs associated with the extra hours that are put into the board participation. But just to be clear, that's why it's good to have a good representative stipend.
Yes, and not that that's what this is, but at least it's more than nothing.
So,
Some of us would do.
What other, I'm sorry, so what other things do you wanna point out that are
so I
different?
think that if we go to page 6, then we have you're gonna see the biggest changes. And this is where we have added a position of the assistant village manager, which is, proposed. We're looking, we have the public hearing for that open, but this accounts for that position.
What page are you on?
We're on page 6. And
This was changed,
Is
right?
your, is is Jamie's title changing?
Jamie's title is not changing. Jamie's, so we have official titles, her official title is confidential secretary to the village manager. So, but her function and the role that she plays, is not, changing. If anything, it's expanding, so that's where we're seeing, again, this would be the additional, position, and one of the things that we talked about when I presented earlier about the justification for the position is to really move ahead some of the projects that we've now seen going through the budget process that have been sitting in budget,
Yeah, that's what-
recommendations year after year and not moving forward. So this actually gives us that capacity to move that
Is
forward.
this the full salary that we're seeing?
No, that's the general fund salary. That's the general fund. And again, these are like, we don't know what, that's the proposed, the sort of placeholder salary. So, again, when you're doing those things, you wanna make sure that you're allocating the resources that you may need. It doesn't necessarily, that means that will be the final salary. And then the other place where we showed an increase, because everything else basically stays the same, was on, if we go to page 11, it was, marketing, branding, and professional services. So right now, we're contracting with,
Honest.
Honest Creative, thank you, for the Little Big Austin campaign. But we have had a lot of requests from the entire business community, and beyond, to be able to have a more robust, awareness campaign. So we're looking to expand the, Little Big campaign to encompass the entire business district. Potentially, this is what we're hearing from people. That's what certainly was reflected at chamber meeting that was at earlier today. And then also, address other issues of, have the potential to address other issues of economic development and things that will, again, help support our business community, help support OSMIG, and, make sure that we're communicating as effectively as possible.
So, I,
I have a question. The ICMA, that's the thing with Debbie, former village manager Debbie.
Yes,
Is
that's,
another-
International Managers Association.
And you can still affiliate yourself? with-
Yeah, I think it's probably a good, I've been gone to some of their meetings, and it's been helpful, and it's good networking, and particularly good when you're comparing things that other communities are doing, so, whether it's salaries, whether it's ways of doing things, I found it very helpful.
I'm sorry, what page are we on?
We're on
I
the
was.
bottom.
We were on the
I
right.
was-
Okay.
So I don't know if the
sorry.
amount allocated for, public relation marketing is enough.
Brand.
And I don't know if it should, I think you need to think about how to include the public and private piece. So it's very easy for lots of businesses to say the village should brand itself and do marketing to do X, Y, and Z. My experience of this campaign is that if there isn't skin in the game from other people financially, they're not involved. And I think where this campaign could have done better is for more involvement. And because you have citizens who work all day long, for the most part, in other jobs, and not even in this area, some of them, it's very cumbersome. So I think the challenge here is not just say, let's spend more, but to say that to spend this, we're gonna have to see some of the businesses also involved in a material way. It could be in goods, it could be in time. The concept the village should do, the village should do, the village should take care of, the village should take care of, is, we're not a city, and we're not set up for a lot of this stuff. I think it's great that there's something in there. I think it's been, I think it's been like I've been saying it since I started. I think it's really helpful, to have people who get to know us being brought in to help more with social media and to coordinate things and to bring, and to give us a storyline and to react to things. It's not a huge amount, it's an okay amount, in this day and age, not, I think, enough to really get out there and do great stuff unless the business community and somehow is also involved. for a number of reasons, and it's not just about money. I would do 3 times this money if I thought that they would also participate wholeheartedly in it. So I think that's your challenge. It's not just a financial one, but I think that this is a good start, and I'm glad that it's in there.
Thank you. It is sort of a thinking, like, again, marketing budgets into effective marketing can be very expensive, and that's not typically, I think that if we started budgeting for that, we might get some pushback from the community, I really couldn't blame them. But we did have, I had my first meeting with the chamber this morning, met with a lot of, we had pretty good attendance, and a lot of people were there from both, you know, representing businesses and, you know, from the whole corridor. And we did talk about certain things and what we can do as a village and what we also need help from the business community to do. And it didn't come up specifically for PR, but in terms of beautification and adopting things and helping with plantings and things like that. Those are functions that businesses do get involved in and contribute to. And we got a good reception from the people at the meeting saying they would be more than willing to do that. So I think it is making sure that we are supporting the chamber to become as robust as possible and supporting the business community, which in turn can really help drive some of the initiatives in terms of streetscapes and ultimately, as we develop economic development campaigns and looking for other ways we can get the word out, how we can do that in partnership. But I think it is important that we do this in partnership. We would never have the resources to do it by ourselves. I don't think that would be embraced by taxpayers widely, but I think that collectively we can have much greater impact. So that's hopefully the that seems the direction everybody's sort of warmed to that idea.
So we still have to meet with the downtown development group. which
Yes.
I know, I didn't,
Yeah.
they weren't available, it's not really mine. It's like a weird thing for me to be asked to do it, but I'll do it. The other, not by you, but they asked me to set up the meeting. And just not everyone's been available, especially with this budgeting, but we will, do that. And, in that vein, cause I'm hard of reading this, but tell me about Christmas time. Let me just finish, cause I think you're hearing me, I see you reacting, but I meant that whole program that we did. First we covered the meters for a whole bunch of years, we decided not to do that, then we went to green bucks or something like that. I mean, we're in November, I'm assuming that's not happening this year.
No.
So it's not in the budget for any of that stuff, okay.
So are we uncovering meters?
Nope.
I don't, the covering of the meters was not necessarily received warmly by all the businesses because it inhibited people moving out of the parking spaces. So I think that we really haven't had the time to meet with the chamber to discuss this. We have to sort of look at how we want to promote the holidays and make sure that we do something that really meets all objectives. So that's sort of an ongoing conversation. I will be meeting with the chamber next week to debrief on the Austin Bucks program. But as far as what we're doing for this year, we haven't necessarily
we may
come
not
up
be
with the
able to do
ideal solution. So
And not that it's in the budget, but it may need to be, and it may be this big. Can we get some decorations going up 133 even though there's no electricity? Because it's just would look better, so.
yes.
I mean, it's not a big budget item, I don't wanna spend half an hour on the concept of tree light, but.
We are looking into what we can do based on sort of the electrical capacity we have and what we could do on a short budget. Miriam, the Riscos will also be working with the Girl Scouts to paint the windows on the businesses on Croton Avenue, so that's a nice holiday thing too.
Only because it's coming up now and really we should have this conversation sometime in, the new year or the spring about holiday decorations going forward. Like, every time we go to one of these conferences and there's salespeople who want to talk to municipal governments, there's a handful of people who do decorations. Is that your intention that in the future we'll contract with an outside decorating organization? Because I'm all for doing things in-house and using the incredible resources of our talented staff whenever it makes sense. But check, the amount of time and energy to check and recheck light bulbs on 20-year-old decorations that we can't increase to go any further, it really is just not the best use of our resources. I realize it might cost a little more, but I'd rather have them doing something else and us pay for an outside contractor to come in and do something fabulous on whatever streets we decide to do it on in a given year.
I think I certainly wanna look at what the time commitment is of our staff, because if we're looking at their time plus whatever you're doing, it could actually be much more efficient. We'd have to
Even
really
if it's,
compare it.
even if it's not, like, we need to do something going forward, and I don't wanna buy a bunch of decorations for the next 20 years that our staff is gonna be maintaining and spending time
And
to put up.
touring and,
Yeah,
How much money do we dedicate to concerts?
But
to concerts,
Yeah,
no,
like I know the town does their,
no, but we did a bunch this year.
we did, it's gonna be in the recreation budget, and we'd have to go back and look, I don't know, but I don't know if you guys know, or if you can, but it would have been, like the jazz series that we did,
Did we even pay?
but did we pay for
I
it?
don't-
I
paid
I
for the
didn't
art-
realize
I
we were
don't
paying for
I
that.
think we did.
That's what Bill.
The artists though, you do, there's definitely something that gets paid, because I don't think the artists do it for
We
free.
pay for the magician.
We don't pay for any of that, that's, I don't
She's
think we
not
do,
saying
right?
that.
Like we,
She's saying we do.
No,
No.
I'm sure that we must, because I can't imagine these people are doing it for free.
So I thought what happened like with the jazz concert series is we'll
Wait.
give them a loan, right? They go out and sell tickets and then they replenish the
That
funds.
was a
No.
whole concept
No, that
of
was-
that.
That
Different thing.
We're talking about jazz at Henry Gordine,
Okay,
every other weekend in
The
the
sort
summer.
of free concerts, that's what I'm talking about.
okay.
And then there was acoustic, which we never got to see, 'cause it was Wednesdays,
Yeah,
acoustic on the
acoustic
square.
Wednesday night, but I
That-
do think
something
that
came up this year?
typically, I would be surprised if we weren't paying artists.
So the question
So I raise
is,
that because, you know, when we talk about, you know, I'm just thinking about Market Square and, you know, sometimes we have, whether it be Portuguese, whether it be
events,
Hispanic, Hispanic festival, or whether it be other cultural events. And we often sometimes sit up here and say, hey, make sure that people come
Mhm.
out and about, you know, and sometimes people come to the village saying, hey, is there any way that you can possibly sponsor us? Would it be a far out there idea for us to actually begin to say, hey, when there's something happening in our downtown with respects to music, that we actually use it as a time to draw, you know, that'll be an official way of the village being able to sponsor an event through cultural activities like performances?
For the village to
For the-
sponsor
yeah.
it.
Is that
Um,
something that's just so far out there that?
I think I'm not sure that's different than what Bill started doing.
I mean, essentially, these are all village sponsored
Mm.
events, so if I'm understanding correctly, that's like those, the jazz series at Henry Gordine Park, the acoustic series, those are sponsored
Mm.
by the village out of the recreation department.
Or could there be more? That's.
Could there be more?
Yes.
I'm sure there'd always be more.
I think that certainly working with the different arts organizations and, our art commission, I think it's possible, I think people wanna see more performance, I think people wanna, you know, make sure that we're making art and music accessible to the most of the community,
Mhm.
so I think that would be widely embraced.
Mhm.
I think we have to look at what that looks like and
Yeah, because I'm not.
What are you thinking? Because really, I mean, like, this summer, I was
Total
putting
shift
this,
for you.
I was putting, these things in the Monday messages every week, and I was like, every night this week, you can do Market Square on Wednesday, you can do, on Monday, you can go to
So
jazz,
I'm-
and then.
So
so-
for me, I just wanna know the dollar amount, and is there, like, the dollar amounts?
If anything, like, and the other thing is like, in Ossining, there are so many venues that have live music today that did not have live music 5 years ago.
you can see music almost every single night of the weekend.
From like
honestly,
Memorial Day to
from-
Labor Day.
From like free to like a very, very low
Yeah,
fee.
like no cover.
And even for the
Sometimes it's
winter,
just
for
like
the low
buy-
fee things,
buy a
just
soda.
because they wanna be inside and you have to be warm, so.
Yeah, but I think what's being brought to table, and we set this about a week and a half ago, we need like a spreadsheet of all the, and they have to be categorized, because they're not the same, events, parades, processions, there are all these things,
Mhm.
and they all cost money to this village. from cops, to ladders, to microphones, to the rec center having people on staff, to sanitation. That is not to say we should do fewer of them or more of them, but I think somewhere we should have one thing that says, this is what's
Like,
happening.
this is the dollar amount, and this is,
Right,
So
they should all
that's-
have a cost association, and then you might say, you know what? We should move some of these things off of Main Street, because we've heard complaints from the businesses about locking up their venue, and what it causes. So there's the ability to move things around, and maybe then there's more parking, and there's like, if the village is involved, they are a sponsor, and they promote it, which you already do. You know, I think you promote all this stuff anyway, through the official village, whatever. And then you could, the board can choose and say, let's make this even bigger, or let's move this over here, or let's whatever. I mean, I think, is this what you're
yeah,
saying?
that is,
I don't mean to put words in
yeah,
your mouth,
no,
but I'm
but that
feeling
is
like that's
sorta-
really what you were
because
looking at.
because, you know, it wasn't my understanding that we were actually paying, you know, the stuff that happens at Henry.
I think some of them we do
Yeah,
actually.
you know,
We
and
have
you know,
to-
it was,
we
the
have
thing
a
is,
budget for
it
it.
wasn't, nobody came to the board and said, is this a good use of public funds?
Mm.
Nobody did.
So, and it's, so, the,
Again, my goal is to see more, not
so,
necessarily.
so what,
I don't
part
think
of,
you're, I don't think you're actually
I know.
judging anything.
so part of
No,
the, what we're
he is.
doing now.
I think I am too, but not the same judgment.
What we're doing is part of that whole basis for the events, the streamlining of the events, and activities and public, you know, public art opportunities and music. All this is getting looked at, and one of the things that we wanna do is to understand the cost, so that when we're determining fees, that we're making the fees commensurate with the impact. So again, we're not expecting to, you know, a lot of this is done, particularly village, sponsored event, are done as a public benefit. But we wanna make sure that, again, as our number of events and types of events keeps growing, that we're conscious of, one, what we're paying for is public benefit, and then making sure that if, you know, whatever fees we're developing are tied somehow to actual impact of the event. So as opposed to, right now, the fee schedule is old. We've updated, but the way it was calculated, like the basis for it was based on an event scenario that really we've sort of outgrown.
And, you know, like both every city now, but certainly the county, you know, its use of parks, you know, there is like certain days and certain times, and it's not infinite. And when you have a growing community like ours, people start jostling for both space, for time, for police, for certain, I mean, they're just jostling.
The
And
demands
these are
are,
not good feelings amongst people, and some are used as fundraisers and some aren't, and I just think we need to know what's happening in the villages in simple English and what the costs are
Yeah.
to the village and,
well, that will
start
be
making
part of the
decisions.
event presentation, so that spreadsheet is under, we've gotten some of it already, so we're in the process of compiling that. That'll be part of the event strategy presentation.
So, I just have a quick question, on page 13 of 16. So we have $7,000, it's probably column of that.
did you say 13?
13,
Yeah.
yes. So we have the Austin Arts Project Committee, Community Outreach Event, Performance and Grant Initiatives, $7,000.
So is
That
any of
was-
the funding for that, like, I should know this, but, what the funding for any of these events coming out of that pool?
No,
What is that?
this was just for.
I don't remember, I
So
remember
I
briefly,
remember, that's what I'm saying.
but I cannot
That's
remember.
what you were
what-
talking about.
Yeah, but that was,
That was part of the, I
That never
remember,
really happened.
no, it didn't
Right.
happen, wasn't the
Partially.
dance?
It did.
Yeah, it was,
It did.
but it was like.
No, the dance got planned and then it did not happen.
Yeah, but this was like, wasn't this like, hey, we're putting money out and then after they,
We'll raise more than enough
They'll
money.
raise the
Yeah,
money
they'll
and
raise
we'll
it
go
and then
down
they'll-
Okay, so
and
you're
then-
thinking of is the Jazz Fest.
okay,
We fronted the money the first year,
okay,
then it became its own thing.
gotcha.
So essentially, we fronted the money for the seed money, and now,
so what is this committee has done? I mean,
What is
we-
the
we're putting-
$7,000 for?
We're putting something in here, and, I mean, they usually have come in front of us to say, look, this is a project that
This-
we're working on it, or this
You-
is
you
what
This
we're
was
thinking about.
one of John
I know.
Codman's.
yeah, no, but I took over the liaison position, but Karen, you met with representatives from the Assing Arts Project. They have some initiatives that they wanna talk to the board about, and
Mhm.
they've started talking, they met with Karen and
Yep.
Jamie, you're doing part of that.
They were looking to do, sort of a framework to facilitate public art and murals, so like sort of a workbook would, I'm sorry, that wasn't the right word, but, ways if people wanna do this, what we would need to do, so that, like a toolbox, so if you wanted to create public art or murals, like what would need to be done, and what public areas can we do that? If you wanted to sort of negotiate with a private landlord, what would that look like? And, I haven't really followed up with them on that, but it was something that they were looking into. I do think though that based on historical spending, we did cut this $7,000 back a little bit.
That's the 3,000.
What did we
Yeah.
spend, what did, was spent last year?
We spent
975?
No, that's 2018. 2019.
nine
this year was-
seventy-five
it was-
58.
yeah,
Right.
$975?
In the,
So
and
from
the,
975, we're going to 7,000?
no, we were at
We were
7,000,
at
we're actually bringing it down
To 3.
to 3.
So some of the things that they have done is, and this is what, when we had the 7,000 there, I think that a good chunk of that was considered, they were hoping to have it help offset the cost for the collaboration between Tamiko and, what's the jazz artist?
um,
Oh, today.
Ted Genius, thank you. That didn't actually come to pass, but that idea of the collaboration between different artists is born out of this series that the Ossining Arts Project is continuing a few times a year. We're at different venues. They invite artists from across the spectrum of disciplines to meet each other and to make connections and to spark ideas of how they
Right.
might be able to work with each other. So when they host those, there are some modest expenses for refreshments that are served and things of that nature. There might be, they bought like T-shirts to wear to an event and like, so it's not the kind of thing that you have to put a huge budget line item for. It's you, well, that's a reasonable thing you wanna do and it's a benefit to the artist community and it's consistent with what your mission is, then, you know, talk about what something reasonable is and you get reimbursed for it. I mean, that's kinda how we treat most things with
Right.
any of these committees, right? So
Uh-huh.
this whole need to put a giant number in the budget has been tamped down. I think 3,000 is excessive, but certainly
They also
7,000
They
is
also have a
excessive.
website, and they have a meetup,
Okay.
and there's various other things that they do spend that money on.
So is
Right.
3,000 enough?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
3,000 is enough.
Yeah,
And
it's probably-
on that
yeah.
site and on all that stuff, is to Montel's point, does it say sponsored by the Village of Austin?
Good question.
Okay, because I think,
I can let you know tomorrow.
well, they should do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're taking public money, you should thank the public.
I mean, to me, going forward, if they have something that they'd like to work on, they should be coming in front of us and let us know, like other committees do in that regards.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want just give them money, it'd be like, what are we spending on?
So right now, we're not giving them any money without like a, justifying an expense, so this is really more of a placeholder. If they don't justify it with, something that's approved, then it won't be reimbursed. So it's not, they don't have carte blanche certainly.
I mean, I know that downtown, community has done it before, they usually come here, they have 3 or 4 projects and then fund it with the
Right.
downtown fund that we have.
But
That's
typically,
different.
Yeah.
but typically this group has, I mean, we have put money aside for them, but they still have come the following year once they have their proposal.
They come once a year.
Yeah, and say, okay, oh, you put such and such in the budget aside for us, this is what we're doing. I mean, that's typically how it's.
Right.
Yes.
I mean,
And it's not to say they're not doing it again,
Yeah.
because this is a budget thing to
I
set.
understand that.
And if we didn't budget enough for them, the answer is then maybe this coming year, you might wanna come to us in September rather than, I mean, we can only guess so much based on.
But that's sort of
Yeah,
what
we're
I'm
saying the
important
same
to now
thing.
is like, they should be here
Well, their
before,
liaison might have,
again, these are volunteer boards and they did come to us, so,
Well, they may have
So-
come to the
The
village manager.
liaison gets-
so we did
gets
talk to them,
the
there
liaison.
weren't necessarily, we didn't work out costs associated with what we were talking about. I think that whatever they're doing, $3,000 is a conservative estimate, that can cover what they might like to do, but they would still need to present to us and justify those costs. So, this is a
Are they-
conservative placeholder so
So
that we
just-
have
Are they
something.
coming to speak on
To-
that thing where you've asked everybody to come and speak? Are they one of those groups?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so.
So they can give the
opportunity.
5 minutes update then and then go into more detail if they have a clear idea of what they're really asking. But just the OssingArtsProject.com website, in at least 4 locations I've noticed already. It opens with the Asning Arts Project, OAP is a village appointed committee, volunteers with mission
There
steward.
you go.
So it doesn't have a link to the village website or a logo or anything, but it does acknowledge who they are. So there should be stronger connections.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation because
but
it
they
gets a
are,
little out
but
of
they are
date,
talking
you know.
village, it's mentioned, I mean.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's-
they're not
there's
pretending to
definitely
be, they're
No,
not
no.
pretending to be an
That's good
independent
news.
agency.
It's fine, let's not make it difficult, it's fine. Okay.
Okay,
Alrighty.
so, finance? We wanna do finance? Do you guys wanna do finance? Are you up for finance?
We
We've
can
got
do
15
finance
minutes,
without
don't
the
worry.
sheets, probably.
We have, can you do it in 15 minutes?
Well, she can make it up and down in 15 minutes, I don't see
No,
that.
she's